Well, welcome back to Choice Chats with the Tennessee Federation for Children. I'm Shaka Mitchell, the Tennessee State Director. And these are some videos that we started doing where we connect with school leaders, parents, educators from around the state. Obviously, we are all kind of going through this COVID-19 experience together. And while in many ways it is just a mess and it's hard, and we hope that everybody out there watching it remains healthy and safe, but there are bright spots. And so we thought that this would be a great way to share some of the bright spots that are happening around the state in education. And so this week, I've got two friends with us, and I'm gonna give a quick introduction, but then I'll turn it over and would love to hear, a little bit about what you're doing, what you're both doing in your roles here, in this case, in Nashville. And so first, it's Rebecca Hammel, and she's the Superintendent of Catholic Schools for the Diocese of Nashville. And then Anna Rumfola is the principal at St. Anne's, also here in Nashville. And so Rebecca, I'd love to toss it over to you. I would love to know, what would you have said your job is, maybe if we were doing this choice chat in February? What do you do, and what's the role kind of the diocese?
Well, first and foremost, I am the bishop's delegate for Catholic schools in Middle Tennessee. So we belong to a diocese which spans all of Middle Tennessee, and we have schools in 7 of those counties throughout. So we have 16 total diocesan schools, and then we have 3 independent Catholic schools. We have about 5,500 kids enrolled in our schools, making us one of the larger private school providers in the Middle Tennessee state. Really, in my role as Bishop's Delegate for Catholic Schools is to help forge a movement when working together, more like a system or a district that many people are more familiar with as far as term, while we provide that autonomy at the local level. So that's one of the beautiful things about Catholic education, is that we have a system in the diocese or the local church, but then each of our schools has a lot of autonomy at the local level. So my job is really to help forge those relationships and move us forward as a school system in meeting the mission of our church.
Yeah, and that's one thing we're definitely want to talk about, because we've had a few of these chats now with school leaders, and those are individual schools. But like you said, you're kind of in this in a unique space, because you have thousands of students really who are being educated within the system. And so there's probably, I would gather, particularly a time like now, some lessons learned, in one spot that maybe apply in other places. And yeah, Anna, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Anna Rumfola. I am the principal of St. Anne Catholic School, located in the nation's Sylvan Park area here in Nashville. I am in my 3rd year here at St. Anne. We are a pre-K 3 through 8th grade school, and we currently have around 170 students in our building with us. We take up 3 buildings on campus due to COVID. We've transplanted some classrooms, but yeah, we're here pre-K 3 through 8th grade, 170 kids.
Very cool. So Anna, that's a good segue, because I was going to ask. All right, I was out there. I was at St. Anne's in March, which seems like 10 years ago, and we had a good chat, and I met some parents there, some of your faculty members. A lot's changed since March. What school look like? Kind of what's a school day look like, and some of the changes? Because as you mentioned, you've got kids in the buildings, right? Yeah.
Yes. So we have, I will say, definitely some parts of school look completely different. And then some parts of school still very much look the same. We are here to help our students grow in their spirituality, their academics, and their service. And you still see that each and every day in the classroom. The biggest difference is they are in masks. From the very beginning, we tried to establish a mask culture where students understood what wearing a mask meant. We're a Catholic school, so they're in uniform. So they actually get to use their mask as a way to show their personality. Our kids love wearing their superhero masks or their Frozen masks or whatever it may be. And I think that has really kind of helped even our younger kids see this and think, this is okay. This is, it's okay that I have to wear this. Our teachers are incredibly flexible, and our students have been so excited to be back on campus. So really what you see now is you see a lot of our students outside. Our students bring beach towels to school every day. Earlier today, instead of diagramming sentences in the English classroom, they were outside with sidewalk chalk on the blacktop diagramming sentences. Math classes happen outside. We are definitely, I think that's probably the biggest change, masks and seeing that we can teach students anywhere. It doesn't have to be within four walls. And our students have loved that. Our teachers have really liked it because it breaks up their school day. And so there are still very much the basics, but there's definitely some changes that you see as soon as you walk on campus, but you still feel that love and that community that St. Anne can offer.
Yeah, I love that. I had not thought about masks being a way for kids to show, individuality, but you're totally right. Kids, people, but kids find a way, right? And I remember being in a school that had uniforms, and even though our students had uniforms, all it meant was that their sock game was amazing, right? They just, a lot of personality there. So Rebecca, do the things that Anna described, are all the safety protocols and so forth, are those things, like, tell us, how does it work in a structure where you've got multiple schools? Do you, with your leadership team, come down and say, okay, here's what's going to happen? Or like, how do you come up with that plan for the various schools?
I would say it's definitely a shared process. The principals and I were in calls all summer long and really talking a lot about the protocols and the CDC guidance. And then I happened to have had the opportunity to work on the team assembled by Mayor Cooper's office to reopen Nashville schools. So that was a gift because I was privy to all this great information from public health officials and true experts in the field, the medical doctors, the epidemiologists, all of it. So basically we took that plan and then I formed or assembled a small team here and had them review our intended protocols. And then we passed that off to the schools and asked them to draft their own plans as they saw fit. But now some of the things were absolutes, you had to stay with this, and other things were a little more county dependent. And at that time, keep in mind that the cases in the caseload, if you will, in Nashville was really high, and in some of our other counties low. So it might have been that you guys decide if you're going to be in masks all day or only in those high traffic areas, whatnot. So they had a little bit of independence there, but really they had to make it work for their school, which is really true of a lot of decisions here. So Anna can probably speak to that a little bit and talk about how she made that fit for her school.
Yeah, so we received the plan from Rebecca, and then we basically took the plan and rewrote it to fit our school. And so we emailed out a 6-page document to our families. And the original plan we were given was very helpful because, it covered from arrival, depending on if you arrived at 7 a.m. for morning care or 7:45 to the school day, all the way to dismissal and then aftercare. So we laid out like, okay, if you're at arrival, if you're at before care, it means this. If you're coming straight into the building, it means this. And then it outlined like what a typical day looked like. How would mass be celebrated? How would lunch be operated? How does recess work? And so it really did take into account every section of the day. And then there were some things that just kind of went across the board, such as, bringing a beach towel, wearing a mask, having temperature checks done. And then after our plan was emailed out to our families, we also included a video in our email to our families that hopefully was just kind of a like peaceful, we're in this together. It was kind of a calming, here's the plan, read it, take a deep breath. We're going to get through this. And then 2 weeks later, we had Zoom calls with each individual grade level. And so I had Zoom calls with the parents, and they got to ask those questions like, all right, what does this specifically mean for my child in 6th grade or in 2nd grade? Because parents have different kinds of questions depending on their child's age. And so we did those as well. It gave the parents time to read the plan and kind of interpret it and then reflect on what their questions were. And it definitely made coming back to campus a much smoother process.
Yeah. And I would love to know, how do you and this is for either one of you, but how do you balance, you've got safety like protocols and systems in place for a whole school. Let's just keep it at the school level. But I'm sure, because I have been in schools before, you're going to get unique instances where there's maybe it's a unique health case. I've got to think, like, for instance, do you have a family who maybe has been with you, has been at St. Anne's for a while, they love the school, but they've actually got some real health risks at home. And they say, well, we want to be a part of the school community, but we actually need more restrictive or, measures and not. How do you navigate those unique cases?
I will say one of the beautiful things is St. Anne is relatively small. So we do have 170 students, but that really allows me to have those individual conversations. So I will say first and foremost, it was individual conversations. And that was even outlined at the very last of the plan. It was, if you have any questions or you have more concerns, please reach out and email me directly. We do have 2 students on campus that are virtual because they do have outstanding health concerns and they did not want to leave St. Anne. They love being a part of the community, but they just can't be in the building at this time. And so they are virtual students. They join us every single day for class. And actually one of the virtual students, he actually was able to come to campus last week. We talked to mom, we worked out a plan. He really wanted to see his classmates. And she said he can come if they can be outside, they're socially distanced, and they stay in their masks the whole time. And we said, perfect, we can make that happen. And so last Friday at 2 p.m., the class got to go out. They haven't seen him since, March of last year. He's a great student to have, and they got to see their friends and just be with him. And so there are those concerns, but being a small school, we're able to make those adjustments. And our parents and our staff has just been great at making those adjustments throughout the day. I mean, it was an email that says, hey, they want to come on campus. And the teacher was like, yes, let's make that happen. So.
Yeah, that's fun to have a reunion. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't know if you're giving yourself enough credit, because I think that maybe it's a matter of being a small school, but 170 kids is still a good number of kids. And I think you probably have just a culture that is in communication with your families. And I think that seems to me too to be really key. Like all the communication you mentioned that you were doing early on, it sounds like made a big difference. Yeah. Rebecca, so you mentioned this being on the mayor's sort of COVID kind of schools reopening task force. There's so many of these task forces going around. I don't know which is called which now, but I know the one you're speaking of, and there were a lot of really talented school leaders and educators and on there. So one of the things, and sort of putting you on the spot a little bit, but one of the things that I know that we hear from parents is, well, the Catholic schools, someone from the Catholic schools, Rebecca Hammel was on this group, and somebody from, various other schools. I know a few others, a charter school and another independent school were on this. And schools are doing, like you're doing something very different from what Metro Nashville Public Schools is doing. But you're seeing the same data. So how do you kind of think about that? What are some of the factors in the decisions?
Oh, that's a great question, Shaka. And I will tell you, I mean, this decision is probably one of the hardest decisions any educator would have to make, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Parents, for that matter, as to whether or not they want to send their child into that environment or not. So truly, as part of that committee, we had a conversation together and understood that everybody has to make decisions based on how their school can respond. And given, we have schools in 7 different counties, we have a little more autonomy probably than a typical public school district. And we could respond in a different way. We just don't even have the workforce that Metro has. I can't imagine trying to manage that. And I think Dr. Battle is amazing, and she remains in my prayers. But we just knew that if we put these protocols in place, we had a lot of our own medical advisors as well. If we put these protocols in places, that we could respond accordingly. And right around the time that this decision was being made, the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with their guidance. And, you know, all of that was already covered in our plan. So we felt pretty confident that we could respond in such a way. But I promise you, I daily track several different sites to watch the caseload in each of the school or each of the counties where we have our schools. And then I report that to the principals weekly too, like, hey, your trend is coming up and let's keep those masks on. And, you know, our protocols seem to be working. So we really felt we could do it well. And so far it's going very well. Not to say that we've not had any cases, certainly we have, but it's been managed in cooperation with the public health department, and we're able to keep the schools open that way. But you have to stay true to your protocols. And I really do believe that that's what the saving grace here.
Yeah, yeah. And then what about for the students who are doing maybe some remote, remote learning that Anna mentioned? How have you kind of been working that? Has that been a lot? And I can speak from experience. I've got 3 who are all remote right now.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? I may just be dropping them off at St. Anne's on come Monday. But I say that in jest. We're happy with our school, but like the remote, some of the stresses are real, and our school is actually doing a very fine job of it. But I know that a lot of parents have had struggles with that. So how's the remote piece going for families who are doing that?
Well, 95% of our families or students rather are in person. So, but that does not discount the hard work of our teachers. And I tell you, I stand in awe of what they are doing right now, because many of them are balancing both the virtual learner and the in-person learner. At our high schools, we have the 2 Catholic high schools. Some of their courses are virtual only, so that's a little bit easier of a balance, in my opinion. But for our schools that have teachers that are doing both, it's just a real stretch and demand on our teachers. But they're managing it, and they're doing it with grace. And much like Anna said, having the kiddo come and visit with the class just to keep that partnership alive and those relationships going. I think that's critical, but I do realize it's a toll on our teachers, and they've done a tremendous job. At the same time, all of our principals were preparing for that over the summer too. Mm-hmm. So had a lot of work happening to make sure instruction can be delivered via one platform. So our parents weren't having to go to multiple places for their students' classwork. So a lot of effort, a lot of preparation has gone into this. But again, I still acknowledge it's a lot on our teachers. And for that, I'm just so grateful. To me, they are just bearing, gospel witness at this point in time. And I know their reward will be great. So I owe it all to the teachers in that regard. And I can't discount the parent either, because it has to be a partnership. And they're willing to do their part to make sure that their child is there. And they do have to be present. And if it's, in fact, I'm aware of a call where we had a youngster who was not tuning in. And it was a call with the parent that said, look, this is still school and this matters. And it turned out that kiddo actually came to in-person class. So everybody's monitoring really closely and trying to work very closely together, which is one of the benefits of a Catholic education too. That partnership with the parent is critical.
Yeah. One of the things I wonder, maybe Anna, if you can speak about, it's been a curiosity of mine. It's, non-scientific, but it stands to reason, I think. And that is, I've wondered about like mental health of kids. And I wonder if you're, obviously being sensitive to privacy and whatnot, but I wonder do things feel different from maybe a behavioral standpoint, for kids who are coming back? I mean, this has just been a time like no other, right? And so adults have stress and the kids feel that kids have stress. And so are you seeing that, and what does that look like? What are you how are you addressing that maybe at your school?
So we actually started addressing that during in-service. So we came back a week before school started for our in-service, and our in-service with teachers was focused around social and emotional needs of ourselves and then our students. So we started the first day of in-service was focused on ourselves. And so the entire day, because that was actually the first day as a staff, we had all been back together since March. And so the entire first day was spent in prayer and reflection, talking to each other, talking about our fears, our concerns, our excitements as a staff. And then we spent that afternoon meeting with a pediatrician, and we just asked as many questions as we could. I mean, it was just like, we wanted to know anything and everything. And so that was the first day.
That's great.
And then the next day we spent focusing in on our students' social and emotional needs. So we actually had a session, a 3-hour session that morning with a licensed therapist, and she walked us through basically from how to not stress out if a student sneezes to how to meet the social and emotional needs of a student that's just really struggling on a specific day. And then we spent the last day of in-service really just kind of taking what we had learned from the first 2 days and putting it into practice, and just really celebrating each other. We came together, we shared stories and meals and things just to kind of come back together as a community. So really, when you walk into our classrooms, we start every morning as a staff at 7:40 with prayer, but then we as a staff take deep breaths. So we stop, we close our eyes, we take 3 deep breaths, and then we go get our kids. We start the morning with our classrooms. We start in prayer. The kids start with breathing or just kind of being for a second. We talk a lot about, just kind of centering themselves and preparing for the day. A lot of our classrooms, you'll walk in and you'll hear music playing, or they have the different sound machines, which have been shown that just kind of help calm students, and then also getting them outside. We talked a lot, and you still see it. One of our buzzwords this year is grace. And we talked about how, the first 2 weeks of kindergarten, typically what would take you a week is now going to take you 2 weeks, as far as like teaching procedures and things like that. We spent the whole first week for pre-K all the way through 8th grade, just being with our students, having conversations with them, of course, teaching new procedures and protocols, but, just spending time as a group. And so then now we're really starting, it's like, okay, we're in our 5th week. We've done our Iowas, we've done our STAR assessments. We are, they're taking math tests, but we're always falling back on that. If they need a minute, take a minute. If a teacher needs a minute, take a minute. You will see Go Noodle happening in the classroom. You'll see novels being read outside because the teacher was just like, I just needed to get outside. I could tell our stress level was rising and we needed to go out. And I think that's been huge. Like I think physically starting the year with those social and emotional needs, we have great teachers. We know how to teach math. We know how to teach reading. We've never taught in a pandemic before. And so that's what was key, was we need to make sure that we as a staff feel that we're loved and supported by each other, so that we can make sure our kids feel loved and supported by each other. And if our kids feel it, then our parents feel it, because their kids are coming home happy and excited and loved. So that was definitely a key to start the school year, both in service and then once we actually had our children back in the building.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there that I just want to sign on to. And I hope a lot of people watch the video now, but rewind that, because there was really a lot there, I think, both in how you planned for the school year and made sure to take care of the adults. It's a little bit like they tell you if you're on the airplane, like if the masks drop out, put yours on first, then put the help your child next to you, not because we don't love them, but you got to also make sure you're in the right frame of mind. And that's so good. Okay, so I do have, I've got 2 more questions for you, and I'm going to be mindful of your time. I know it's the school day, and Hannah was telling me earlier that you're in week 5 already. So you're well into the semester or the quarter. But Rebecca, what are some of the things just hearing Anna talk right then, I thought, boy, some of that stuff is probably worth doing regardless of whether or not we're in a pandemic. right? Thinking about some of these things, are there some things that you're seeing across your schools that you think, boy, this is something that we should really consider incorporating into the future, well into the future, regardless of what happens, with COVID?
Most definitely. I think the whole piece of humility is very important, in understanding that we need to take care of one another. It seems that the pace of school has become so rapid that we have lost sight of that time, really, where we just let kids be, and how we might model to them how we take care of ourselves, maybe through prayer, maybe through quiet, maybe through sitting outside and just thinking, right? So I really feel like the pace and emphasizing what's most important is something that's going to stick with us for a long time. And Anna captured all of that so beautifully. And I thank her for that. And I trust that that's happening in all of our schools as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that also came to mind is your schools seem to have this interesting dynamic where obviously you're trying to make as much space as possible for the fact that we all need grace. We need to extend grace. And I mean that in both ways, right? I mean, I sort of mean that like temporarily and on a spiritual level, like we could all use some grace and extend it as well. But I also heard you say, and I think it was you who mentioned that your kids have now taken Iowa assessments. And that's something that we're also here. I mean, I'm just sort of seeing a lot of parent buzz around, well, maybe not just parent buzz, but kind of in the ether, questions around like, why would we test right now? We know that the tests aren't going to go well. And without, I don't know, maybe this will tip my hand, but our students, my girls, did some map testing, and we actually didn't think it was that big of a deal. We sort of said like, yeah, we're going to jump back in, mostly because we wanted it as like a diagnostic. We wanted to know how, like, where are they? But has that been a big issue for you, and like having to convince parents that no, it's going to be okay to take a test again?
It wasn't at St. Anne. I can't speak for the whole diocese, but so we took Iowa in a very similar situation. So of course we didn't take it in the spring of last year like we would have. And
Right.
So when we returned, Rebecca actually gave us the choice of schools, like what test we would give. And I think the majority of us opted into the Iowa because it is the assessment we already use and our students are already used to it. But that's what it is. We presented it that way to families. We told them early on during the summer that we're going to take it. This was not a surprise. You're back on campus. We're now taking a test. And it is exactly that. It's a benchmark. It's an opportunity for us to see where our students are. We presented it as we need to know how our students did towards the end of the quarter last year. So we need to know how our returning students, where they're standing. And we also need to know where our new students stand, because we didn't have the opportunity to go through all of the assessments that we typically would maybe for a new student in the same manner that we would. And so it gave us all kind of a level playing field at St. Anne, as far as like, we're all going to take this Iowa. It is not, something that's going to follow you around. We want to know where our students are right now so that we can make sure if they need extra tutoring, we have that available. If they're right on grade level, we know that. And if they're ready for a challenge, if they're ready for the next level and they need to be challenged in their classroom, we're aware of that too. We didn't want to wait and then find that out later on.
Yeah. I actually had a friend who's a father, said he used that language to a permanent record. He said, well, I don't know about these tests. It's going to go on their permanent record. And I thought back to my own experience at an elementary Catholic school. And I said, I don't know that there was ever really a permanent record. I think that that's just something that they used to tell us to get us to behave sometimes. Okay, well, I want to again thank you both so much for the time and sharing what really are some bright spots, and particularly because you're so many weeks into the school year. I think you've seen a lot of neat experiences so far. Some really innovative practices that I've heard with taking kids outside, and obviously we hope that your kids and faculty and school communities continue to stay healthy I just want to close with this. So I'll ask Anna and then Rebecca, if you want to answer, what's something that you're doing now? I mean, the start of the school year is always a stressful time for school administrators. This year is like dialed all the way up. So, what are you doing? What's something you're doing just to kind of that self-care piece, and how are you taking care of yourself and your own family? Anna, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think one, it sounds very corny, but I listen to Christian music on the way to work. I have my daughter in the car with me, and it makes me feel good to start my day that way. And then also just taking moments during the day, where before I would constantly be running. I have a lot of alarms set on my phone for different things around campus. And so I kind of partnered that with, when an alarm goes off, I know I need to be somewhere, but I also make myself take a breath and just kind of collect myself. Because I found if I don't, when I get home, to my 2 kids and my husband, I'm just too wound up. So that way I have about 7 alarms that go off on various times during the day for different things. And it just forces me, I stop, I take a breath, and then I go do what I need to do. And I think just remembering the excitement that our kids are still feeling really helps.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Rebecca, what about you?
Similar to Anna, I offer a lot more up to God, and those deep breaths, you just, breathe in grace and let out everything that is worrying you at that moment. And it might be 3 breaths. If I'm lucky like Anna, it might be 200. We just offering it up and knowing that I'm just so convinced through my own faith life that we're meant to be together. And I don't mean that necessarily just in school right now, but we are meant for each other. We're meant to belong to one another, right? And that the best thing we can do for our kids right now is to offer them that in the safest way we can. And that gives me a lot of peace, but certainly calling on God to just carry it when I can't, right? So that's just been a real saving grace.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you both. I mean, I know that just the simple fact that your schools are open is a tremendous service to the community, the Middle Tennessee community. And so that's a big deal for a lot of parents who are essential employees. This has been a tough go. And so I think just the sheer fact that you're open and operating, taking care of kids, keeping them safe, and oh, by the way, providing a great education is, we thank you for it. So thank you both. To folks who are watching, we'll be back next week with our another choice chat. We'll be speaking with a school leader from Clarksville and finding out what things look like up there in the Clarksville area. But again, thanks to Anna Rumfola and Superintendent Rebecca Hammel. You guys have a great day and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.